Hey guys, it's Destiny, and today we're going to be discussing everything you need to know about Kafka regarding how she operates as a character and my recommendations for her. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. To begin with Kafka as a character, she is a Lightning Nihility character who benefits highly from DOT, which is damage over time. Some forms of damage over time consist of shock, burn, wind shear, and so on. Some characters that do shock can be Serval. As for burn, you could think of Himiko or Hook, and for wind shear, you can primarily think of Sampo. Kafka's skill does lightning damage to an enemy based on her attack, and she also hits adjacent enemies, which means it'll be beneficial to target whichever enemy has two enemies beside it, similarly to how Serval's skill works. Her skill also will do damage based on a percentage of DOT on the enemy, which from closed beta 2 was 100% of the damage over time inflicted onto enemies. As a result, Kafka will deal lightning damage based on her own damage capabilities, and also do damage based on the damage over time on an enemy, which can result in a good amount of damage overall if there's a good amount of DOT on the enemy. As for Kafka's ultimate, she will inflict lightning damage onto all enemies with a high base chance to shock them from numerous turns, and upon receiving the shock, enemies will immediately take damage from that as well. When enemies are shocked, they'll take a percentage of Kafka's attack as lightning damage each turn. As for Kafka's talent, when an ally uses a basic attack, Kafka will immediately do a follow-up attack, which I think looks so cool by the way, as she pulls out her guns and just literally blasts the enemy. Unfortunately though, this can only be triggered once per turn, which I'd love to see this animation numerous times per turn, but overall this talent is just nice for additional damage. As for Kafka's technique, she will deal lightning damage and also have a high base chance to shock all enemies similarly to her ultimate, and enemies will take damage each turn from Kafka's shot. Overall though, her kit looks really good, and just as a side note, this is based off her closed beta 2 kit and just basically stuff we know officially. If there are changes to her kit, I'll make sure to discuss those in future videos once we have official confirmed information. I'm just gonna go over what we officially know. Of course though, before we get into Kafka's role and team comps, if you're enjoying this video and want to become part of the Loomies community, make sure to subscribe, and now let's carry on. As for Kafka's role, she looks like she'll be a huge damage dealer on your team, especially with ideal teammates, as she could do a lot of damage through her skill dependent on how much DOT is on the enemies. Some ideal teammates as a result can be Sampo, Serval, Himiko or Hook, and so on. Sampo will likely be one of her best teammates due to the fact Sampo has a base chance to inflict wind shear with any of his attacks, which can be his skill, normal attack, ultimate, and so on. Sampo's skill can hit enemies in initial time on a selected enemy and then 4 more times at random, which results in a total of 5 attacks and 5 chances to inflict wind shear onto the enemy. And his ultimate deals damage to all enemies and has a base chance to make enemies take a percentage of more damage over time for 2 turns, which is incredibly useful for allowing more DOT damage output from Sampo himself and Kafka. Serval can be a pretty useful partner as well due to the fact that she's able to inflict shock onto enemies very consistently, and she's able to extend shocks through her ultimate, which her and Kafka can benefit from, as extending the damage over time allows Kafka's skill to consistently deal more damage with the secondary effects of her skill. As for Himiko or Hook, they can be useful for inflicting burn onto the enemy, which once again Kafka can use to her advantage in order to deal more damage with her skill. I would like to say though, I personally think Sampo or Serval, out of all the characters that can consistently do DOT, I think those two will definitely be the best partners for her. A notable mention though can be Silverwolf if you did decide to pull for her, as the weakness implantation being inflicted onto enemies can be very useful, and assuming a lightning weakness gets inflicted onto the enemy, which results in that enemy also having lowered resistances to that typing, then Kafka will definitely be able to dish out even more damage. Kafka may honestly be the queen of nihility, with Sampo and Silverwolf following right behind her to destroy whatever enemies they face. Add a sustained character for heals or shields, and then bam, Kafka will dominate the enemy, except now instead of her dominating you in Simulated Universe, now you'll be able to dominate the enemy yourself and steal all their hard-earned credits. In all seriousness though, if you plan to use Silverwolf, possibly adding Serval can be really good just so you have duo elements with that. If you do put another Quantum, that would be pretty good as well. And Biley would actually be a really good sustain character for this team, since now you have another Lightning character. So if you wanted to do duo element comp, that can also be a possibility. Eventually we'll get Fu Xuan, who is confirmed to be a Quantum Preservation class character, and she may be a good teammate for sustain purposes, and you can possibly use Silverwolf, Kafka, Serval, and Fu Xuan for a duo element team, which may be really strong overall. Of course though, once Kafka is here, I will do extensive testing as to what team comps synergize very well, and if our beloved shampoo bottle is amazing with her and the rest of the characters work as well. Once again though, I do think Serval and Sample will likely be the best partners, just for what they're able to provide with their own skill kits and how it may possibly synergize with Kafka overall. As for possible relic or build ideas, I would definitely look at Band of Sizzling Thunder, as it can increase her lightning damage, and when she uses skill, it'll increase her attack for a turn, which can be useful if you intend to skill and then gain ultimate and then use your ultimate, or if you have someone like Bronya on your team to go again in a turn. The shock from Kafka's ultimate lasts numerous turns, so even if you use your ultimate last in a turn cycle, it rolls over to the next turn and you're still able to take advantage of the shock from the ultimate for your skill, as your skill will do more damage to enemies with as much DOT as possible on that enemy, as mentioned before. So either way, you'll be dishing out a really good amount of damage. As for stats, I definitely look into attack, speed, possibly the crits. I would want to test crit rate and crit damage though on her before I would personally recommend this, since from what I have seen, damage over time can't actually crit, but I would assume that her skill and ultimate should be able to crit. Of course, I will test this once she's here once again, but this is just what I'm personally thinking could possibly work. And if you possibly intend to break with Kafka, break can be a really good thing to have as well. I think Kafka can actually be a pretty good breaker due to the fact of how her skill kit operates. She's able to hit multiple enemies depending on if she's using skill or ultimate. So overall, I think break might actually be pretty nice, since once again she can damage numerous enemies. Once Kafka's here though, I'll be testing out builds and finding out which is the most successful for her overall. As for my personal thoughts on Kafka, I think she'll be really strong, and having a damage over time centric DPS looks really promising, as it'll introduce a brand new playstyle, and overall I have pretty high hopes for Kafka. Plus, she's really pretty and definitely a fan favorite design for many. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you want more discussions, guides, and so on, make sure to subscribe and leave a like to support the video, and comment down below what was the first thing you started playing video games on. It could be console, PC, your phone. I just honestly want to know. For me, I started on console, and I definitely started when I was really young, so I've just been playing games for basically my whole life at this point. But of course, like always, I hope you all have a nice one. Peace.